Welcome to the PharmaSource podcast. I'm joined today on the podcast by Federico Vigano, who is Vertex's country manager for Italy and Greece. Prior to that, Federico served as country president at AstraZeneca and has also spent time at Boehringer Ingelheim and GSK. But for today's episode, we're going to focus on Federico's role on the board of Assobiotec. Assobiotec is the Italian Association for the Development of Biotechnology, representing over 110 companies, science and technology institutes, and parks. Great to have you on the podcast, Federico. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me.
Of course. If you could just introduce yourself, please, and your role at Assobiotec.
Yes, as you said, I can be defined as a pharma executive in the sense that I've done several roles in global organizations, but also in local organizations here in Italy. Most recently, I've been in Biotech for 4 years, and before I was country president in AstraZeneca Ireland. So my role in Assobiotec, first of all, as you said, Assobiotec is an association connecting more than 100 companies and companies, research institutes, and other institutions related to the biotech world. And so my role is I'm part of the board of Assobiotec in Italy first, and I'm particularly focused coordinating the area that we call therapy area. So the area where we have basically 4 different kind of streams. Mm-hmm. The first one is focused on access and all the problems on governance. The second stream is focused on orphan drugs specifically. That is a kind of an area that is growing these days. And then another group that has been recently formed is the one on advanced therapies. So everything that is related to the gene therapy, cell therapies, all these kind of things. And then the last one, last but not least, because it's very important, is the group on clinical research. So how we can foster clinical research in Italy, how we can create Italy in Italy a good ecosystem for the development of clinical research. So these are the 4 areas on which I'm particularly focused. Then, of course, I contribute to the other areas. In general, Assobiotec is divided in 4 main areas. The first one is the area of therapies. The second one is the area of medical devices or diagnostics. The second is focused on startup and biotech general. And the last one is mainly focused on bioeconomy. So biotech applied to bioeconomy.
It'd be good to understand a bit more about Italy and how it stacks up against other European countries when it comes to production value, innovation against other EU nations.
Yes, I think Italy is a kind of under brackets particular animal in Italy in the pharma world. Historically, Italy has been one of the biggest producer in Europe. Is still a bigger producer in Europe, but when we're talking about a classical pharma market and I would say small molecules. I think we are the biggest country in terms of production value, with more than 30 billion exports from Italy to other places of the world. If we talk about biotech, the situation is a little bit different in a sense that the system historically has been a little bit underdeveloped, not only versus the big giant of the US, but also versus China, but also versus other European countries. And the reason is, I think there is multifactorial reason. I think the first thing that is very important if we look into the biotech world in Italy is that we have quite a large number of companies working on that, but 72% of them are considered micro companies. So I would say with a very low turnover, with a very low collection of capital, and so on. So in general, the system seems to be a little bit underdeveloped. So if we compare the number of companies, the number of also patents that we have registered, the number of publications, scientific publications, relevant scientific publications, these numbers are okay, are quite high. Then when we move from this area, that is a scientific area, to a more kind of an industrialization area, Italy is lagging behind.
What's the underlying cause for that, would you say, Federico? Because as you say, when it comes to well-established pharma manufacturing, you've got the likes of Angelini, Alpha Sigma, Menarini,
Yes.
Chiesi, you've very big, well-established companies. So particularly if you've got a lot of patents, why is that not translating to more up-and-coming scale-ups?
Yes. There are two main reasons, I would say, that we can identify. The first one is the way the transfer from the university, so from the basic knowledge to a kind of industry idea, so a startup, and so what we call knowledge transfer in one way. That is quite complicated in Italy, and this is mainly due to the fact that the rules are not facilitating this transfer of technology from a pure knowledge area to an industry area, and this is something quite relevant. In one way, the system hasn't been fully adapted to the new kind of concept of biotech. And the second point is that for me is very relevant. It is the market capital of markets, so market capital, in a sense that we really struggle in having significant players in this market, both in the public but also in the private sector. So I'll give you an example. Things are improving. Because, for example, we had recently a public fund on CDP, who is a big kind of entity in the public domain that is investing money in the Italian companies, where now we have biotech as one of the area of interest in their venture capital part. We have another fund that is an ENEA fund that is focused on biotech. But if you compare this, obviously, to other European countries, no comparison with the US. Of course,
the
situation is different. So there is a significant, difference between the possibility of having access to capital for the US and other European biotech versus the Italian one. So we need to. The institutions are moving in the right direction, but we are still a little bit lagging behind. We need to improve on that and increase the of markets, and we need also to simplify and make the rules more stable.
Good to understand a bit more about the regulatory environment as well. What does the support look like from a government level?
In terms of regulatory, we are fully embedded into the European system. So, of course, Italy is part of the European system. So, I think that we are quite competitive. Maybe, Europe, the Americans, they complain that Europe is over-regulated in general, but this is always a kind of a trade-off. But in general, EMA is working quite well on that side. The problem is that the companies, they even don't reach the stage of the regulatory. So the problem is below the possibility of putting drugs into the market. So the problem is how we can translate science into something that can be industrialized. This is something that can be commercialized. So this is the main issue in Italy. So how we can translate the science that we produce in the university, the science that we produce in other settings, into something that can be something that can be attractive for an industry.
Connecting them with capital.
Yes, exactly. What we are doing as Assobiotec, we draw a kind of path that is called a biotech journey. That is exactly with all the pain points where you need to face if you want to translate knowledge into something that can be industrialized. And I think we are working on specific steps that are important. Like, for example, as I said, everything starts from the university. So having the right people, and I think we are in the right direction on that. Then the research, so funding and research. But then the most difficult parts are the tech transfer. That is very, very quite difficult to be done in Italy, and then the creation of the startup. So most of the things they stop at the moment where you need to create a company, where you need to formalize the commitment, both because of the lack of structures, but also because of then the problems of getting seeding funds and all these kind of things. I think this is the main where we are trying to work with the authorities to make this easier than it is now.
What's the role of the life science parks in this? Can they help to facilitate the ecosystem?
Yes, the parks they were established exactly with this aim, so to create a link between research and the possibility of getting funds and using this research to enter into the industry market. And they are working pretty well. There is one in Milan that is working pretty well. But of course, if you want to make it as big as we need, I think there is still work to be done on that. And the problems are still that the number of the funding is limited even for the parks, and then the translation of what they do into the park into something bigger is always quite complicated.
We talked about the fantastic heritage that Italy has in manufacturing. What role could the contract manufacturers have in supporting earlier stage biotechs, or finding new ways to collaborate and partner, perhaps giving them access to different funding models to help the earlier stage companies? Do CDMOs have a role to play?
I think that's the other point that is also important to highlight is the very strong position that we have in traditional manufacturing is not translated into biotech world. So if we talk about, for example, advanced therapies or cell therapies, Italy is lagging a little behind the other even European countries, and it's something that is a gap that we need to fill. And again, if you go back to the biotech journey, I think that manufacturing is quite a late stage of the journey, because obviously before going there, you need to have, for example, animal data that you need to produce, and to produce that, the amount of funding that you need is significant. So the problem is first in this kind of collection of capital, and then the next step, and it's something on which also in Assobiotec we are trying to work, is to really make our cell factories, make our biotech lab more competitive, also to be part of the European network. For example, I don't know, to produce for big pharma. Now a lot of big pharma they have gene therapies or cell therapies, and in my knowledge, there is no production lab in Italy at this stage, and this is something that, if you compare this with a strong presence in the traditional manufacturing world, of course, this is something that is a little bit strange, and we need to fill the gap, and we are trying to fill the gap. And I think this is also an area on which the authorities, they need to work, because it's something that requires a little bit of long-term strategic view. And I hope that the European Biotech Act can help also Italy to advance on that direction. But at this stage, I think that we are far too. I mean, the manufacturing is not the main problem that we have to develop the biotech.
Talking about at a European level, Assobiotec is one of the founder members of Europa Bio. What's the collaboration there with Europa Bio? I guess what I'm interested in is the difference between EU-wide policies, EU directives, and how they're implemented at a local level. What does the relationship look like from an association point of view?
I think at first the relationship is very healthy and positive. I think our position is, is always a two directions communication. So what is important for us is to try to influence, obviously, the strategy of European bio in a positive way. Yeah? It's not something that we want in any way, but I think that obviously we want them to incorporate also the kind of the issues that we have in Italy in their overall strategy and strategy to influence European authorities. And then we try to use what they produce and the activities that they do to try to influence our ecosystem and to push our authorities to be more to be active in the areas of biotech. There is an area that is growing recently. So basically, what is quite typical is quite a typical relationship of the local European entities. No, so we try to influence them, but then we use also all the achievements that they get to as an example of what can be done at the local level to help the authorities to be more active.
Thank you. Final question for you, Federico. If there was just one initiative for the year ahead, for 2025, that you're focused on, that Assobiotec wants to achieve, appreciate there's these, 4 different parts of the business and lots of things going on. What would you call out as being, the most important initiative?
We have 2 tables active on which we are main participants. I think one is the internationalization of Italian biotech, that is led by my colleague in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I think that if we can make this successful, I think this is most likely the most important. The other one is the clinical, the table on clinical research. And I mean, if give me 2 shots, and I think the second one is to make Italy really competitive at the European level for the clinical research. And I think we would like to contribute to that. Then, of course, there are things on governance that are also important. But I think as a biotech association, I think making Italian biotechs competitive at the international level and making Italy really competitive at the European level for clinical research are the 2 topics on which we want to work this year, and we hope to be successful.
Fantastic. Federico, thank you so much for your time today. Pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation again.